Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Just me and Steve today. Sam out sick. Sick in quotation marks. Also, Mutant League Football just came out yesterday, and he's been looking forward to that for a while.
He took an official sick day.
He did take an official sick day, but at the same time,
he went through the proper protocol here.
Sick in quotation marks. So we're getting into the draft guide here. It's coming out for you guys next week. That'll be available, but we're sort of putting the finishing touches on it here now and finishing our draft board. And so we've been going through all this week and the last week and making our horizontal big board. You know, you've seen the Cowboys big board, each of the last few years because they keep releasing it on social media for some reason.
Is that on purpose?
No, they allow cameras in there and then someone picks it up at the end of the day usually. But so we're going through and we're going to actually give you ours. You're going to actually be able to see ours, much like the Cowboys, but not like any other teams in the NFL. So you're going to get to see where we actually stand on all these guys in terms of grades, in terms of round grades. So first round, second round, top 5, top 10, so that sort of thing. And at the end, when we came to our final draft board, we got 29 guys, with first round grades. And so today we're going to go through them, talk about a few of those guys in the first round that we're probably higher on than the general public, guys that we're going to be banging the table for come late April. So let's get right into it and start with the quarterback position, where we have 5 guys with first round grades. The season ago, everyone talked about how loaded that quarterback class was, how many guys could end up going in the first round. 3 did end up going. This year we have 5 with the potential, and I think all could when it's all said and done. The obvious ones, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, those 2 we've talked about for a lot of this podcast. Baker Mayfield as well, you guys know. He's in the top 5 for us. Sam Darnold in the top 5, Rosen in the top 10, and then 2 other guys with first-round grades, Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph, Oklahoma State quarterback. That might be one that might be a little surprising to people, Steve.
Yeah, I think we've seen people that think Rudolph is a third-rounder. We've seen, a lot of people who just completely dismiss him as a potential first-rounder. I have heard about people around the league that do think he's a first-rounder. I think he's just all over the map as far as expectation. With the quarterback thing, again, the theme for me, Mike, this entire draft season, positional value. We're going to be talking about this non-stop. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you were willing to take any quarterback, but Mason Rudolph checks enough boxes that I'm willing to take him in the first round. 3 outstanding years of production at Oklahoma State. I think he's outstanding throwing the ball outside the numbers. I mean, as good as any quarterback as I've seen these last couple of years as far as timing and accuracy throwing outside the numbers. He's improved in between the numbers on slants and posts the last couple of years. I think he's a pretty good decision maker. There's some question marks as far as the Oklahoma State scheme and the great receivers he's been working with and, floating a bunch of deep balls and all this stuff, which, by the way, my big pet peeve, Mike, bring it up again. An underthrown deep ball does not mean a guy has a weak arm. That's an accuracy or timing issue. It's not an arm issue. I don't think Rudolph has a cannon for an arm, which I think is part of the reason maybe people don't love him in the first. He does not spin the ball as cleanly as, say, like a Josh Rosen or a Baker Mayfield, but I think he has enough arm. And, again, he's a guy I'd be willing to take in the first if I need a quarterback.
Arm strength a lot of the time for me is almost like a tick box. It's like you're at the NFL level or you're not.
Right.
And there reaches a point where more arm strength doesn't give you any more sort of advantage on the field. You can have, you can throw the ball 100 yards. You can throw the ball between the goalposts from your knees from the 50. And that doesn't necessarily make you a good quarterback. That doesn't, make you any more likely to hit a window down the field than a guy who just has the requisite NFL arm. And I think Rudolph at least has the requisite.
So I used Carson Wentz a couple of years ago. I thought he had such good velocity. For him, it made up for maybe a lack of timing. He has improved his timing the last couple of years, but when you watched him at North Dakota State, he was a tick slow on a bunch of his reads, and then he would just zip the ball in there and it would make up for it. There are certain guys where I do think that little extra velocity does help. And then there's a guy like Josh Allen who I love his arm. I mean, I think as far as pure velocity goes, but I don't think it necessarily helps him a ton the way he plays the game. And plus, you have to throw the ball a touch as well. You have to throw a catchable ball underneath, and some guys that have a cannon just can't do that. That's your Ryan Mallett.
The one thing I go back to with Rudolph, and one thing that I talked about last year a lot with DeShone Kizer was DeShone Kizer, when he didn't use play action, was dreadful. He had one of the worst passer ratings in college football. Not using play action. And a lot of play action sort of production, a lot of that is scheme-based. A lot of that is the offense you are in and the fact that, colleges are running play action 40, 50% of the time in some offenses, a lot of that can be sort of misleading and a lot of big plays off of play action that aren't necessarily ever going to be there in the NFL. So what is a guy doing when he's actually having to drop back, take a normal, 3-step from the gun and go through his reads and not have, linebackers and guys all over the place because they're reading, the run game is so important in college. So Mason Rudolph off play action averaged 9 yards per attempt, third best of anyone in this class, and the only one who's a legitimate guy ahead of him is Baker Mayfield, a legitimate quarterback prospect. Had a 99.5 quarterback rating, was very efficient without using play action. That to me is always indicative of sort of a higher level quarterback play. That's an encouraging sign. I'll say it's not going to completely sell me on a guy, but it's. If a guy's on the opposite end of the spectrum, that could, drop him off. That's a bad sign in my opinion.
The most extreme example of that at the NFL level was RG3 in his rookie season, where he was top in the league in yards per attempt off of play action in that year where the Shanahans were just unbelievable, scheming things open for him, and he was last in the league in yards per attempt on a non-play action, and he was just not a guy that on 3rd and 7 they could trust to go find the open man, and we saw that was part of the reason why he was unsustainable. Our analytics guys, George, Eric, they've been working hard on all this stuff, and they agree with you, Mike. That's, play action fluctuates. Yeah, non-play action is a lot more stable. The other thing that you really want to look at, third down production. Mason Rudolph was one of the best in the nation this year on 3rd and 4th down, and he graded well both from a clean pocket and when facing pressure. He's improved his work under pressure, and I think that's maybe one of the other knocks on him. He's not the greatest pure athlete. He's not. He doesn't have a great just feel for maneuvering the pocket and being a great athlete, but he's improved in that area. And he went from a guy. To me, he went from a guy that was kind of on the first round radar, who just continued to produce, and continued to improve in some key areas that I think he should be in that first round mix.
Athleticism for me, a quarterback also is like if you're not athletic enough to make plays with your legs and scramble outside of the pocket, you could be the least athletic person in the world, and I'm not sure it really matters. Because you only need to move 3 to 4 yards. You only need to step up in a pocket just a little bit, shift left or right.
And when I say athleticism, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm talking that like pocket maneuverability and stuff. Like Rudolph isn't great at that, but I think he's good enough in that area. Whereas a guy maybe like Luke Falk, I worry about his ability to just maneuver, handle a free rusher, avoid a sack every now and again. I think it's more of a big concern for a guy like Luke Falk.
All right, let's move on to the running back position where we have 2 guys with first-round grades. One, Saquon Barkley. The other, USC running back, Ronald Jones. I somehow got roped into being on board with 2 running backs in the first round. I mean, I'm not really on board with it, but at the end of the day, we put 2.
Well, we have a whole segment later, Mike, where you can let other people draft. You just say you could take them, or whatever we calling it. So yeah, you could do that with every running back.
I'm not even going to talk about running backs because you can take all of them in the first round. If you go ahead and draft them, I don't want them.
Mike thinks he's going like 0 running back fantasy football style.
Yes,
but look, Barkley. The thing for me is these guys have to affect the pass game, and while Ronald Jones isn't the cleanest pass catcher, I still think pure screen game and big plays in the pass game. Yeah. Ronald Jones is already getting a ton of Jamal Charles type of comps. They both wear number 25, so that's an important part of
that's
comparisons. But the big playability is there, a lot like a Jamal
The dreads
Charles.
aren't, though, which could that affect him?
Dreadlock scouting is important. I mean, it's just you get
that was the Melvin Gordon, was Jamal Charles,
picture.
too.
That's right.
All right, on to wide receivers.
They're both big play threats, though.
On to wide receivers, where the name at the top of our wide receiver board may be a bit of a surprise to people. Michael Gallup, Colorado State wide receiver. Other 2 guys getting first-round grades for us at wide receiver are Calvin Ridley from Alabama and James Washington from Oklahoma State. But, Steve, why did Malcolm Gallup shoot to the top of our board?
Michael Gallup? Is that who we're looking at? Michael Gallup? Look, he has good acceleration and speed, so he gets on cornerbacks quickly. He runs good routes, and he's got some physicality at the catch point. I thought he was very good during Senior Bowl week in the game, and when you just watch him at Colorado State, I think he knows how to get open. He knows how to use his hands a little bit to get open. I think that's pretty important at the catch point. That's very important at the catch point, to be honest. That's very underrated, attribute, I think, for receivers. It's not speed and it's not all footwork. It's that like winning at the catch point with your hands. And he's pretty nifty after the catch. He's not a He's not a shifty runner. He's a smooth runner, and he's got a pretty good feel for where defenders are, so he can create after the catch. So when I'm looking at these receivers, and I watched all these receivers and tried to rank them and everything, I want somebody that can win at all levels. There's a lot of guys that can maybe only win down the field, or they're only going to be short guys. I feel like Gallup has the ability to at least win at every level in the NFL.
My favorite thing about Gallup was, and why I'm fine with us where we had him at the top of our board, is because of his body control. And you mentioned it with the catch point stuff. A lot of production for wide receivers in the NFL does not come when you're wide open. A lot of what Antonio Brown does, a lot of what the top receivers do, comes from being able to subtly create space while the ball is still in the air, and making a play that a lot of guys might not necessarily make. So while I don't think drops are really that important of a stat for wide receivers coming out of college, I mean, obviously if guys on the really high end or really low end, it's a good or bad thing. But I do think the way a guy attacks the football is more important to look at. Gallup very much attacks football like you want an NFL receiver to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think there's a lot to like about him, and just pure PFF production-wise, too. Top 15 yards per route run guy the last couple of years, and our top-graded receiver last year, just pure production.
All right, on to tight end, where we have two guys with first-round grades.
And you hate this again.
Well, I mean,
I put him at the back end.
It's a tight end. When's the tight end ever changed an offense besides Rob Gronkowski? I mean, I had this take, right? You guys already know this take. But Dallas Gator from South Dakota State, Mark Andrews from Oklahoma, two guys earning first-round grades from us. The latter may surprise, though.
Yeah, Andrews is basically like a glorified receiver. I mean, he played slot. He only played about 20% of his snaps in line. And they weren't great when you were talking about run blocking, but I was impressed with him, the way he improved his body control. You're talking about body control with Gallup. Last year, there was a lot of passes where you're like, man, this guy's athletic. He's shifty. He's that shifty guy kind of before the catch and after the catch with the ball in his hands. But if Baker Mayfield was off target just a little bit, he wasn't really adjusting to the ball very well. This past year, he was much better in that area. And then with did we figure out a pronunciation on Goddard? Goddard.
No.
It's the South Dakota State guy.
Is it German? Goddard? Getter? I don't know. We'll figure it out at some point.
This is very unprofessional. This is very unprofessional.
We didn't need to go off this tangent.
It's the South Dakota State guy.
Yeah.
But I was trying to. How do I talk about him without mentioning his name? That guy at South Dakota.
Just say Dallas.
Just Dallas.
We're on first name basis with him.
Now he's 260 pounds, and he looks like he moves like a 200-pound wide receiver. He's got incredible body control. He on the reg makes one-handed catches like all the time.
Yeah.
Red zone threat. So I think both of these guys. I don't know what your
Jordan Plocker's boy.
It is Jordan Plocker's boy.
I remember him talking about him 2 years ago.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jordan's been holding on to this take for a while, and he's thrilled that we've officially called him a first-round player. But I don't know what your take is on the value of a pass-catching tight end in an offense. I think it is just immense. I mean, look at what Washington does when Jordan Reed is healthy and available. So if you're debating, Mike, where you get these guys, that's different from when you have them. When you have them, a pass-catching tight end is a game changer. I don't care what you say.
So I guess that's the thing. There are – so how many pass-catching tight ends in the NFL right now would I have taken or do I think are worth first-round value? Do have justified that? There are maybe 3 or 4. Like Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, obviously, Jimmy Graham in his prime.
I put Hunter Henry
maybe Delaney Walker, maybe Hunter Henry, guys like that. So 5 or we'll call it 6.
I would take Jordan Reed at his peak.
Okay, Jordan Reed also. So we'll call it 7. There are maybe 40 corners that are worthy of first round value. There are maybe 15 wide receivers. There are obviously 20 or so 18 or so quarterbacks.
That makes them more valuable.
I'm just saying,
when you find one.
So it is valuable, but at the same time, there just aren't that many. And so for every year to have 2 or 3 tight ends go in the first round, and a lot of the guys I even mentioned didn't go in the first round. So
the problem is just don't miss on.
Actually, did any of the guys I mentioned go in the first round? I'm not sure they did.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So no, I understand what you're saying. I just know if you can find one. Yeah. I think it's a game changer for the offense. I'm looking at the back end of the first round and a team like Pittsburgh. Oh man, if Pittsburgh can add a nice true receiving threat, that's better than Jesse James, a guy either of these guys. I mean, I think those are really good fits. So I like both these guys. I think they're game changers in the pass game.
If they truly are, well, I'm
If
happy
they
drafting them in
truly
the
are.
first round, but you draft them. You draft them. We'll get to you that later, though. All right, on to the offensive line. The offensive tackles that we have first-round grades on: Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame, Connor Williams from Texas, Quentin Nelson, maybe also.
Quentin Nelson, maybe a tackle.
But the guards we have, Quentin Nelson, we have a top 5 grade on. Isaiah Wynn, we also have a first-round grade on the Georgia offensive tackle / guard / maybe could even play center. And the last offensive lineman we have a first-round grade on center, Frank Ragnow. Might be a bit of a surprise. Arkansas center, played some guard there at Arkansas, but grading-wise, he's actually the closest thing in this class to Quentin Nelson.
Our top graded center 2 years in a row, and last year he played, was it only 8 games?
Yeah.
And still was our top graded center because he just rarely loses in pass protection, smooth second level guy. I mean, he can do it all. I think in the run game. You watched a lot of Isaiah Wynn recently. Are you still of the mind? Would you even try him at tackle? Because
He is
we banged that table.
legitimately undersized. Like I think is legitimately
Like maybe
to the point
6'2".
to where, so to the point where I don't think you try him. Or like I think it could start affecting him at tackle when you're going up against guys who are 6'6" with 34-inch arms. You're at such a disadvantage that you're just not going to be able to land that sort of initial punch that you need to win on the edge. So, and I think he also is talented enough to where he's going to be a very good. Like I said, we have a first-round grade on him because I think he's going to be a fantastic guard. I think he has all the traits necessary, and he graded out extremely well a season ago too. So.
Yeah, so as much as we say just try everybody at tackle, maybe Isaiah Wynn just needs to be. He's the extreme.
Yeah,
needs to be a
and like I
guard.
said, I think he can play center too. But I always want to get back to Ragnow. We don't, like you mentioned, top grade center 2 years in a row. We don't adjust for competition. So the fact that he's doing top grade center in the toughest conference in America to be a center, most like I believe the defensive lines in the SEC are still probably the best defensive lines in college football.
Playing Alabama once a year
is even more. He is legitimately, my opinion, worthy of a first rounder. He is that good, and I don't think he's scheme limited at all. I love his hands. Has some of the strongest hands I've seen in this class. Might be better than Quentin Nelson's hands. He does not let go of guys once he gets his hand placement right. So, other guys have Billy Price from Ohio State as the top center on their board. Some other people, but to me, it's 100% Frank Ragnow. So,
big Ragnow fan. I feel like he would get more hype if Quentin Nelson wasn't this potentially generational guard.
Yeah,
that we've said is a top 5 caliber player. Again, positional value. Figure that out. We need to make that the hot take you had a few weeks ago. I don't know if people missed it, but I feel like we need to make a bigger deal.
I have a lot of hot takes.
Refresh
my memory.
The Quentin Nelson one.
Oh, that he was my guy.
No, just
that he can play
that
tackle.
He's tackle. That he's a tackle.
He could. So that's the thing. It's like how many offensive guards in college football, even like history, have been forced to play guard because your left tackle was a first rounder or top 10 pick in Ronnie Stanley, and your right tackle was a first rounder in Mike McGlinchey. It was it was because like he was the only one of those 3 who wasn't 6'7" with 35-inch arm. Like he was the only one who wasn't couldn't actually play guard. So he got forced to play guard, and then they kept him there because he was so dang good at it. I mean, they could have at some point moved him to tackle, but it was like they had this double team combo with him and McGlinchey and left tackle and left guard that was game changing. We saw it this year with Josh Adams in their running game, one of the most explosive running games in college football, and I don't think Josh Adams is anything special as a running back. So,
and it's funny because our grades didn't really think he was that special either, and there was a lot of people were giving him Heisman hype, and we were like, he's like the 3rd best player on that offense.
Yeah, he's running in a straight line on some of these.
Yeah,
but so I do think Nelson, though, it's like he's 6'5", he has long arms, like he has the movement skills necessary. Tackle is a much more valuable position. The amount of pressures that a tackle gives up on average compared to what a guard gives up on average is something like I said this at some point last year during the draft season, but it's like 15 or so more a year.
Right.
And that's 15 plays that he could affect a year. And so that's value. That's what the NFL is. You want your best pass protectors at tackle because that's the most valuable pass protection position. It leads to the most sacks. So,
and there's just not a lot lot of good tackles.
And that's
in
the
NFL.
other thing.
So if you might potentially have one.
It also is your evaluation on him in this class. Like if you don't believe in McGlinchey, Connor Williams, Orlando Brown, and you're a team that needs a tackle, like I'd rather have Nelson at tackle than any of those other tackles. To be honest.
These tackles are all like McGlinchey I like, and Connor Williams, I think his high end, I mean, we've seen him play extremely well, but there are a lot of people around the NFL that think he's a guard. I don't know. We can get into that in a second. Orlando Brown is massive, but you brought it up the other day. Not too many guys over 340 pounds are that efficient in pass protection. As much as we like Orlando Brown, we don't think he's this terribly slow plotter. He's not like Zach Banner, who came out last year with USC, who really struggled with speed rushers. But Orlando Brown could struggle with NFL speed rushers. So there's a lot of question marks, I think, with this tackle class. Plus, by the way, a lot of the tackles that other evaluators like, I'm looking down our horizontal board here, Mike, we've got him in the 5th round. A lot of these other guys, Martinez Rankin and
Chukwuma
Okorafor from Western Michigan. So there's
stop
some
drafting Western Michigan tackles.
There's some big question marks with this tackle class, which maybe gives your Quentin Nelson theory more legs.
It's a good theory. But all right, let's kick it to the defense side of the ball now, where on our edge class we have 3 guys with first-round grades. Harold Landry, a top 10 grade on him, Arden Key, and Bradley Chubb. We've already talked about how we're a little lower on Chubb than general consensus, but Landry, a top 10, might be, I don't think he ends up going top 10 when it's all said and done, obviously because of this past season, but back in 2016, he graded higher than guys like Myles Garrett. He had one of the best pass rushing grades in the nation, was truly a freak of nature that year. Obviously, injuries limited him, but if you can recapture that, I guess his combine is going to be very important. The numbers he puts up, him being extremely healthy, his medical checks will be important as well. But man, there's a lot to work with there.
There's a lot of question marks with the top end of this edge class.
Oh, yeah.
So Landry, from a production standpoint, 2015, he actually wasn't great rushing the passer, but he was one of the best run defenders in the nation. He breaks out in 2016 to become one of the best pass rushers in the nation. And then last year, injuries and production. Injuries hurt him, and then production's down. So there are plenty of question marks there. But the high end of Harold Landry, the fact that we've seen him play the run very well, we've seen him rush the passer. Granted, he beat up on some right tackles in that 2016 season. He beat up on some bad college right tackles, which we tend to use against guys at least a little bit. But he shows that burst and bend and all that fun stuff that you're looking for. And, yeah, he might be the best edge prospect in this class that doesn't really have a ton of guys like him.
And it's funny, like we say the production was down. It was still better than guys in this class like Sam Hubbard. There's still a handful of guys getting, guys like Arden Key, Sam Hubbard. It was still fairly solid production for an edge guy. Just wasn't the high level that we had seen from him this season before.
Right.
So.
We saw dominant in 2016. Arden Key, I mean, similar question marks with the off-the-field stuff. Usage pattern last year, I think, hurt his production a little bit. And I think you nailed Bradley Chubb because, like I said before, I had a feeling on him that he's a better run defender than pass rusher. He's a pretty good, maybe mid to late first-round pick, and maybe just gets up because Landry has questions, because Key has questions. He gets elevated to top 10 because – Who else?
Yeah, it's like there's got to be an edge top 10. You don't just have there's not a year that goes by without a pass rusher going top 10.
Right.
And so by default, almost he's the top 10 guy because he's so clean. He's had a linear projection to his trajectory to his career, gotten better every season, plays the run well, can rush the passer, is explosive, fits the size that you want. Just doesn't have, in my opinion, the high level sort of traits that I think will be a dominant top 10 worthy.
He did look a lot quick because coming into this year, I was like, man, he's just a hammer against the run, and he's an okay pass rusher. He did look better this year, I think, rushing the passer and looked a little bit quicker and slimmer than I expected. But I have reservations about him in the top 10 as well.
All right, on to the defensive interior class, where only 2 guys ended up with first-round grades. But it's interesting because it's like one's ideal for a 1 technique, one's ideal for a 3 technique. Maurice Hurst from Michigan has a top 5 grade from us. Vita Vea, a first-round grade from us. And we'll get into the value of a nose tackle later, but I think Vita Vea belongs there because of just what he can do rushing the passer. Like, he can legitimately add to your pass rush from the nose tackle position, which is rare. The snap counts worries me. The fact that he's never really played even close to a full season. He only played 60% of their snaps, even at his most productive season this past year. But, man, there's a lot to work with there if he can just sort of get his cardio up, so to speak.
The snap thing's interesting because as recently as 3 years ago, Danny Shelton's coming out of Washington at 340 pounds, and he played like 860 snaps or 900 snaps. He was leading.
He wasn't coming off the field, yeah.
Right. He was up there with DeForest Buckner, who led the nation in snaps, and Danny Shelton just didn't come off the field. So that's a bit of a question mark. But I'm with you. Vita Vea is not just the 340-pound run stuffer, right? He's great against the run, knows how to shed blocks, but, man, can he push the pocket. And he's got a little bit of wiggle when he's rushing the quarterback too. But if you just tell him, hey, go bull rush dudes every single snap, he'll compress the pocket, and there's absolute value in that. Maurice Hurst, I think, again, we're higher than everyone else. He's 280, listed at 280. I think a lot of his production did come on slanting and knifing through gaps, but man, does he play low, and he's explosive. He's got good quick hands, and we've got 4 years of college grading, and we have not seen anybody actually come close to what he's done from a pure down-to-down production standpoint. I think the closest thing was maybe Jonathan Allen, what Jonathan Allen did over a 3-year period, mostly a 2-year period. And so Hurst, I think, is just in a different league compared to some of the other interior players we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, and so we're all in agreement for top 5. If you want a defensive tackle in this class, I think you go up and get one quickly, because after that there's a steep drop-off.
We'll talk about some of the other guys. Sorry, we'll talk about some of the other guys that are getting maybe some first-round hype and why maybe we're not as high on them later.
Good tease. All right, onto the linebacker class, where we again have a handful of guys at a maybe not the most valuable position, but
I think it is, though.
We think it is when you can play coverage, when you can legitimately add coverage. We think all these guys do. Roquan Smith from Georgia, Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech, and Leighton Vander Esch from Boise State, all athletic freaks.
Yeah, I think they're all 3-down guys. They're all guys that can add value, and I wish Sam was here to give his breakdown on Roquan and Tremaine Edmonds, because he's compared them to Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen, where he's like, Tremaine Edmonds could become the guy that plays as well as Roquan Smith, but you could also just get Roquan Smith, who's a legitimate 3-down.
I didn't even say we have top 10
runner.
on Roquan. Top 10 grade on Roquan.
Yeah, Sam's high on him.
Well, he's legit.
We were talking about it the other day. If you could get Deion Jones, if you knew that you could get Deion Jones in the draft, where would you take him? Deion Jones being a guy that you trust in coverage as much as any linebacker in the NFL, a playmaker, a guy that can cover in man, that can play in zone, and he's going to get his hands on and knock down passes. Is that worth a top 10? And I think so. I mean, I would take Luke Kuechly. I would take Patrick Willis. I would take, if I know I have a high-end linebacker, I would take that top 10.
We were just also talking about this. There's, in any given class, you'll be lucky to find 30 good players.
Oh, yeah.
So, taking it in the top, if you know he's good, and like you said, Deion Jones, that's a top 10 player from that class.
Absolutely.
It just is. So, all right, on to the cornerback class, where, again, 3 more first-rounders here. Joshua Jackson from Iowa has a top 10 grade from us. Minkah Fitzpatrick, a first round, and Denzel Ward, a first round as well, the Ohio State corner. Minkah, though, so Josh surpassed Minkah on our board in this one.
I think when you're talking about a pure outside cornerback, there are questions about Minkah. You dropped the stat a few weeks ago, 13 snaps at outside corner last year. I do love a guy that plays the slot, is a hybrid linebacker that does everything, but Fitzpatrick's a little different from, say, Jalen Ramsey a couple years ago, where you at least saw 1 year of Jalen Ramsey playing on the outside. And while technique was a little bit off, you're like, man, this guy's got such good length and movement skills and just pure athleticism that maybe Minkah doesn't have. And he had that 1 year of experience playing outside corner, that the thing on Ramsey was he's either going to become a top 3 corner in the NFL, or he's going to land in the slot safety hybrid role, and he's going to be really good at that too. Where Minkah, there's a bigger question mark if he could be that top outside corner. And then you feel pretty good about the slot safety hybrid thing and this 3-down player that can affect the run and rush the passer and all that stuff. But I just don't think he's as clean as, say, Jalen Ramsey coming out a few years ago, where he was a pure top 5 guy.
And that's that role is a very specialized, yes, that's a valuable role in some teams. Some teams utilize that. Some teams don't, though. It's that's not for every single. It doesn't translate to everyone. And if you can't hold up on the outside, you're just not going to bring value to a lot of teams then.
Right. Yeah, so that's the thing. There's just question marks about Fitzpatrick playing on the outside. We still like him. I'm a big Denzel Ward fan, because he's not your classic 6-foot corner, but pure straight line speed. So he's one of the fastest guys on Ohio State's team. But when you watch his film, you notice the quickness. So there's not a lot of, I think Will Fuller in his pure straight line speed at wide receiver. He's not like the quickest guy, but he's just straight line speed. You don't see a lot of guys that have both. Ward has both. So he's got that recovery speed at corner and the quickness to cover the slot. I think that's a great combo.
Yeah, when you have that, the size issues don't worry me nearly as much. When you have, like I said, when you can do both, find your man that can do both. All right, on to the safety class where we have just one with a first-round grade, and it's top 5 grade, and it's your boy Derwin James.
That's it, my boy. I said last night, he'll play anywhere he damn well pleases. That's a little throwback to old school WCW. Sid Vicious is that's where he was from. Yeah. Anywhere he damn well pleases. That's where Derwin James plays at the NFL. Sorry, Mike. Early 90s wrestling reference that I don't even know if Twitter got it when I put it out there last night, but got a lot of retweets and likes, so feeling good about myself.
But Derwin, I'm really excited to see what he puts up at the combine because it's just a sort of explosiveness and a sort of athlete to where he's so freakish that it's like I'm not too worried about some of the negatives on tape. Like, you teach the guy almost to play football with how insanely athletic he is, and like you don't even need to teach him that. Like, there's only like a few negatives on his tape. It's not like it's overwhelming to where I'm that worried. Like, he's just another level athletically.
Yeah, I mean, look,
and what he can do. Capable.
So the plays where I think he was off on tape, he was like a step slow to recognize when playing zone, or he's just like a step slow on a couple plays from a recognition standpoint. I expected him to just get whooped anytime he went up against a shifty slot receiver, though, because he's 6'3" and listed at 215. But that wasn't the case. I mean, there was now and again a good slot receiver is going to get you, and that reminds me of Byron Jones at the NFL level. I think he's one of the best, most all-around athletic cover guys, but he has to go up against Travis Kelce all the time and these really good tight ends, so he gets beaten. There'll be some of that with Derwin James, but there's also some plays where he is sticking with slot receivers with his quickness at 6'3", 215. Guys that are, sticking with guys that are 5'10", 180, that was what really stood out to me. And, of course, he has the straight line speed and the size to match up with tight ends. Defensive chess piece. That's why I love Derwin and do think he's top 5 value if you've got the right defensive coordinator tapping into that. I think if he plays a role similar to Landon Collins at the NFL level too, I'm really happy with that too. That split safety role where you're working downhill against the run and the pass, the majority of the time, I think there's a ton of value to Derwin.
There you have it. There's the 29 guys in the first round of our big board. Make sure to check it out when the draft guide does drop next week. All right, on to some segments here, and a new segment that we're debuting this week, Forecast Theory. So we talk about different draft theories a lot here before the pod and just around the office, and how we would draft if we're certain NFL teams. And we want to look at the analytics behind them. I mean, we have all this data that we could use to actually find it, but Steve and I, we're not computer guys. We don't do that sort of stuff. We don't know how to find it, and so
we merely ask the question.
So this is a segment where we're going to ask a question about something we were thinking about draft-wise, and then the guys on the Forecast Theory pod, we're going to discuss it, and the guys on the Forecast, the PFF Forecast, one of the pods in our family of podcasts, will actually answer it with the numbers. So, Steve?
So they have to. So we'll ask the question, and then our listeners have to go listen to the PFF Forecast for the answer.
Well, I mean, we're going to give our answer, too. We'll
give our answer, but we'll give our answer, but to get the real answer behind the numbers, they have to go to the PFF Forecast.
Yeah.
It's good marketing, Mike.
It's not bad.
I think.
It's not bad.
No, those guys are good. Go listen to them anyway. All right, what are we talking about?
What was your theory, though?
Oh, what's my theory?
Yeah, you had this theory.
Okay, I did come up with this. So we've been doing this thing for 4 years right now, and I do all the mock drafts and all that stuff, and I've been putting run-stop guys, like real run-stop nose tackles, in my first-round projections the last couple of years, and I've started. Jerron Reed, I put in all of them. Jonathan Bullard was like our top run-stop guy. So it's not just it's just defensive tackles, even defensive ends in general, even a Shaq Lawson a couple of years ago, who had enough question marks rushing the passer. Are those guys truly worth first-round picks? A'Shawn Robinson a couple years ago, we actually said he was so inefficient rushing the passer. I don't care how good he is against the run. We wouldn't take him in the first round. So my question for the Forecast guys, how highly should we be taking nose tackles? and essentially how good do they need to be rushing the passer to be worth it? We just said Vita Vea. We think he has enough rushing the passer to be worth a first-round pick. Now, when you compare him to former first-round picks from a couple years ago, Danny Shelton of the Browns comes to mind. Malcolm Brown from the Patriots comes to mind. These are two guys who have developed into two of the better run-stopping interior nose tackle, just interior defensive tackles, but neither guy gets after the quarterback at all.
Yeah, Shelton had 6 pressures this year.
Yeah, that's just not going to cut it. And I know the Patriots, whatever, maybe they don't get after the quarterback as much as others, but Malcolm Brown, even coming out of Texas, was not this dominant pass rusher. He's a good run stopper.
He had
both
18
guys,
pressures this year.
18 pressures. They both make a lot of plays against the run. So, first off, where would we take these guys? Where should we take these guys? How valuable are they? How much do you actually have to affect the pass game to be worth a first-round pick, like we're saying Vita Vea might be?
Yeah, and I think this is almost the Vita Vea argument is very similar to the tight end argument that we just had, where it's like, yeah, that guy's worth a first-rounder when he is a guy who can affect as a pass rusher.
Right.
When you have that, but how many pass nose tackles are there in the NFL right now that legitimately add to the pass rush? It's like you have Linval Joseph, you have probably Kenny Clark now, and there's not a lot more after that.
There's not a lot, and then it's just that risk reward deal, because it's like when you're
Grady
drafting,
Jarrett was, but it wasn't really a true nose tackle.
I wouldn't call him a real nose tackle, but I mean, then it's the risk reward deal. It's like if I know that I'm pretty confident that Vita Vea, his floor is going to be a pretty good run-stopping interior defensive lineman, and while he was able to push guards and centers into the backfield left and right in college, there's enough of a question. Or is there enough of a question mark that maybe he can't do that at the NFL level, and he lands at that guy that's a below-average pass rusher, a good run defender, and then it's like, okay, was that worth a first-round pick when maybe that's more second- or third-round value? So want George and Eric to answer these things. I want them to add some context to our discussion.
Go check it out there. That's our take, though. I think probably not worth a first rounder. But if you do find a Marcel Darius, like I said, if you find a Marcel Darius, if you find someone like that, they're worth it. So, all right, we're bringing back a segment from last year, bringing it back, the scouting term of the week. We give you a real scouting term, define it, and then we make up one of our own and define that. And these two kind of go hand in hand. The scouting term this week, and I used it a few times in the PFF draft guide, and that's why I did it, is forklift.
Forklift. What is the forklift, Mike?
Well, it's when you can leverage a guy up in the air. When you play with good leverage, so a forklifter, guard plays with good leverage and can stand guys up, take them off the line of scrimmage, and get underneath their pads. It's a forklifter.
Okay. So you've got that sprinkled throughout your notes in the draft guide, because you did
go check it out in the draft guide. A lot of alignment and forklift.
You did all the trench work so far.
And the new scouting term, because this is the sort of the complement to the forklift, is the pallet. If you're a guy who gets forklifted,
you're the pallet.
You're a pallet. So
I hope there's no pallets.
If you don't play with good leverage, your guy doesn't play with good leverage, pallets. So there were a handful of pallets that I saw on tape this year. Yeah.
So how do we let our listeners use this? Because last year we would encourage guys to use the hashtag of our new scouting term and go ask Mike Mayock, hey, who's the best? Who's got the best dorsal fin?
Yeah.
Right. Dorsal fin was one of them and everything. I feel like this needs to be used with O-line Twitter.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, hey, is this guy the pallet on this finish that you just showed?
Yeah. So whenever you ever see someone talking about a guy's leverage, ask him if he's a pallet or not, and that'll be,
is this defensive tackle a pallet?
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to get forklifted?
I think it's a good one. I'm going to start using that one actually, because it
takes a bit of explanation.
Yeah, but it makes sense at least. So a lot of scouting terms don't make sense. So one that does make sense.
We'll get better with the scouting terms.
Yeah, we need your wife to help out.
Should we take? She did have really good ones last year. Should we take suggestions for scouting terms going forward from here too? That
actually is probably a good idea.
We should get the listeners to maybe
give us your scouting terms, and we'll pick the best one every week.
Podcasts at profootballfocus.com. Give us your best scouting terms.
Or any of us just on Twitter at PFF_Steve, PFF_Mike. Feel free to send them our way, and we'll pick the best one every week. All right. Also, another segment here to debut called You Draft Him. We hinted at this one earlier. It's not necessarily guys that we don't like or don't think are going to be good or don't have high grades on, but guys where it's just like, I'd rather not be the team that drafts him.
Yeah.
So
I do this in my fantasy drafts all the time.
Yes.
I'm like,
yeah.
I know that this guy will probably bring second round value. I just don't want to have him on my team.
Yep.
I just don't want him to be my guy.
Exactly. So this week's You Draft Him, I have Marcus Davenport, the UTSA edge rusher. We're high on it. This is Steve's boy also. He's shaking his head over there. He's like,
I started the hype on Marcus Davenport. And now we're sour on him enough.
And now we're saying you draft him. And this goes back to another sort of draft theory that we have, and it's that you have to maximizing rookie contracts is important. If you have a guy who won't be good until year 3, year 4, you're just not maximizing that sort of value you get on a small rookie contract, that sort of value above what you're paying him. And as soon as he turns good, well, it's like you have to sign a free agent edge rusher. And so you might as well be signing a free agent edge rusher and using your draft pick elsewhere. Now, edge is tough to find in free agency, but I just think he's a ways away from being a contributor on an NFL field, a couple years away. I mean, it could be close. He could turn good. He could turn into a dominant sort of edge guy, but I just don't think it's going to happen year 1 or year 2. And at that point, you draft him.
I understand. Look, I understand what you're saying about maximizing the rookie contract. I do think too many people are like, don't over-exaggerate. Don't worry about year 1, or this guy's going to be good 3-4 years ago. It's all about development. But you're right. You do start losing that value. Those first 2 years count because there are other guys that are contributing.
Yep.
As rookies and as second-year players. I do think there's an element to diversifying your funds, though. Diversify your draft players, your stocks, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt to have a high upside guy every now and again. Do I get fined?
You can't.
It doesn't
Taylor,
hurt
bleep
to have
that out.
a
Taylor,
developmental guy.
Bleep that out.
I didn't mean to cuss on the podcast.
God. There are kids listening.
So
to
it doesn't
Steve.
hurt to have.
We're going to be repeating. Oh.
I love how anti you are.
Oh.
That's it. Draft season, that's it. We're not going to say that word any longer.
Exactly.
We really should bleep it out.
But we still have, like I said, a second rounder on Marcus Davenport. I think he could be good in a few years. I think he has all the traits necessary. But again.
But you're like, someone else is going to like him in the first round.
Someone else.
So someone else do it.
You draft him.
All right. The guy I picked hurts me because he's another guy that I like quite a bit. And it's Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame. There's a point in the draft where we've done all of our evaluations and the hay's in the barn, so to speak. And sometimes I like to just go back and watch the players I enjoyed watching the most and just, fly through their film. Jalen Smith a couple years ago was one of those guys. Mike McGlinchey is going to be one of those guys where I just go back and watch his dominant run blocks and him and Nelson together. I just have enough question marks about him in pass protection because I want my first round offensive tackle to be an elite, at least a good pass protector. I have enough question marks with McGlinchey. I think he's good. I think he can be good. We use this Nate Solder comp. I feel like there's a guy that reminds me of Nate Solder every year. The guy that's just like
it's because you just watch bats.
He's a solid pass protector and he's a good run blocker. That's Mike McGlinchey, and I don't know. I might let someone else take him rather than putting him as my cornerstone tackle.
Yeah, Ryan Ramczyk last year only 10 pressures like all season long. Mike McGlinchey, his best season, 16 pressures this past year. It's not clean. It's not perfect. And when he did go up against guys who were NFL type of players, Lorenzo Carter, Malik McDowell, there were a handful of guys who did, get the better of him and had some quick, ugly losses. The one that cost them, that Georgia game this year. But I still like him. I still think there's enough to work with to where we know tackle's another position where you just aren't going to. They're not going to step in year 1 and be dominant. Like there's so few that have ever come close to that. There's going to be a learning curve. I still think he is one that can in time figure it out.
Trust me, I like him. That's my thing. I like him. He's just a guy that if he went.
That's the point of this segment.
Yeah. If he went a couple picks before me, I wouldn't be like I wouldn't have to make that difficult decision.
No.
So that's how I feel.
All right, last segment here: risers and fallers. We do it every week. You know the drill by now. Steve, who you got?
Can we talk tight ends?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
They're all falling.
Nobody really wants to talk tight ends, but a couple tight ends that stood out in my film study in the last week. Adam Brenneman. So my faller is going to be Adam Brenneman from UMass, who's graded really well for us. But when you watch his tape, it's more just like he's that guy who knows how to get open against zone, and he kind of uses his body okay. And there's a ridiculous stat as well that's in the draft guide that we'll give you a little preview here. He's only dropped 2 passes over the last 2 years, which is ridiculous because he's been targeted a ton, and he's caught a ton of passes. So he's just kind of like that sure-handed. He's going to be in the right place. He just feels like this middle-round tight ends to me. And then there's Hayden Hurst.
Plus he quit football, which always a red flag.
Well, what? Look, we're going to have to ask Anonymous Scout
what
that
Brenneman.
does.
Yeah, quitting football.
Not necessarily about Brenneman, but just any player. Arden Keek. Anybody that's quit football. I don't want to piss off Anonymous Scout when he's in here. I don't want to lose him as a guest. But that might get him fired up. He does not. I don't think he appreciates guys that don't love the game.
That's a whole red banner. That's not just a red flag. That's that's the red flag they bring out that covers the whole football stadium.
He might raise his voice. Games. That funky voice that he's bringing to the table. He might raise his voice quite a bit. So we'll ask him about guys that quit football that don't love the game enough. So Brenneman, I guess a faller in my mind. I expected more from him before really diving into his tape. And then Hayden Hurst, my riser, South Carolina tight end. He's a former minor league pitcher, Mike. So he's unbelievably athletic. He's a great athlete.
He's handsome and
he does it all. I mean, he takes care of kids at hospitals, and he does it all. He's a great guy, and he's an animal after the catch. Like, he is looking for contact. He's looking for dudes to run over. He's also shifty after the catch. He can kind of make guys miss, and he's got good size. And like I said, he's young at the position, even though he's old in age, 25 years old. So I think he's, again, another one of those just receiving tight ends. That was the theme of this entire tight end class. Can this guy block? I don't know, but can be a weapon in the pass game. I'm not saying I'm taking Hurst in the first round or anything, but I think he's a second, third round, but more like third round, really good receiving value.
All right, my risers and fallers. My faller, first off, was Andrew Brown, Virginia defensive tackle. I had heard before people were saying, if you like Maurice Hurst, you like Andrew Brown too. Which no, that was not the case. He is, like, I can see they're similar in build, similar in terms of get off. He does have a good get off, but man, he just not much besides that. I didn't love his balance.
He's always had some ugly plays on tape.
Yeah, has the ugly losses to where I just don't think he's. And the thing was, his best pass rushes weren't even from the interior. His best pass rushes I saw on tape were him as an edge rusher, which is like, that's a little concerning because he's going to be, I think, on the interior at the next level. So, not a fan of his. He's not. If you miss on Maurice Hurst, go take him in the second. That's not my take at all on him. He's more. If you take him in the fifth or fourth as a project, I'm happier.
How often you win matters. So even if he does have a couple reps that look like Maurice Hurst. Maurice Hurst has done it at so much more frequently than everybody else in this class, where Andrew Brown's top grade 77.6 last year. He's never graded over 80 in our system. Former 5-star recruit who just never truly put it all together.
And my riser is Florida defensive tackle Taven Bryan, who I actually have a take saying, I think he might be a defensive end at the next level. He's a little undersized for a defensive tackle. He's a 3-tech at Florida. Incredible get-off, incredible athlete, flashed some dominant games. Inconsistent, has another guy with some ugly reps, does not have it all together at this point, but a guy who legitimately got a lot better every single season of his career and has the sort of athleticism you can't really teach. And there just were reps where it's like other guys can't do that in this class. There's only maybe one or two guys that can do some of the things he did in this class. And there's something there. I don't know exactly where I'd end up taking him, but I think we ended up with a second-round grade on him. And I think I could even see taking him at the top of the second because he can, like I said, he's an athletic freak.
So he's the opposite of Brown, who was a 5-star recruit and never really, dominated or anything, whereas Bryan was like a 3-star guy coming out of Wyoming, going to Florida.
Yeah.
They plucked him out of Wyoming. And early in his career, didn't play a ton, but he was pretty good, and he looked strong, and he looked like he had something to him. But he also looked like a guy that was more than just this like rotational college defensive tackle. And then he comes out this year and was just dominant for Florida. I mean, he was the best player on the field. Texas A&M, he dominated. He was the best player on the field for multiple games. So there is something there. And if you're happy with the way the trajectory of college went, then you are thrilled that maybe there's more to him to
We're skirting around saying
improve at the next level. If he can continue
there's a
to
side of
improve,
him that thinks he could keep going upwards.
you could keep going up on the side.
All right, that's it for us, though. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back later in the week giving a combine preview. Talk to you then.